Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of KnoxvilleDirtDigest.com. Mike Roberts along for the ride from the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame and Museum. We have a guest that I have known now for too many years, and we'll introduce him coming up next on KnoxvilleDirtDigest.com.
Tired of doing this? Get a can of this and spend more time doing this. Seafoam helps engines start easier, run smoother, and last longer. Seafoam. Seafoam! Help your engine run smoother and last longer with Seafoam motor treatment. Just pour it in. Seafoam works to clean your fuel system, clean your oil system, and stabilizes fuel up to 2 years. Make the proven choice. Seafoam motor treatment. Available everywhere automotive products are sold.
The best Wing 410 sprint car drivers in the world will converge on the Southern Iowa Speedway for the 26th annual Sage Fruit Front Row Challenge. The champion's belt is up for grabs on Monday, August the 9th. See who will win the $20,000 cash prize. There will be slide jobs and all the side-by-side action you can handle. So get your tickets online at oskichallenges.com or by calling 515-957-0020.
Hey, and welcome back to KnoxvilleDirtDigest.com. Tony Bokhoven, as you can see, is with us, and I wasn't exactly referring to you as I've known you too long.
No, I agreed. When you said it, I actually nodded my head.
Yeah, we've known each other way too long. The act continues right here on the show. You know, you asked me, and I literally have invited you in here blind, what we're going to talk about today.
Which typically, like today, makes me extremely nervous.
Every Saturday night makes you extremely nervous. I mean, that's my job, is to keep you on your toes, right? Well, when you were on last time, we talked about growing up, racing, your go-kart career, your stock cars, running around with Erkenbright, you know. I mean, you and I have these conversations all the time, and contrary to what we do in public, we talk behind the scenes quite a bit. Mm-hmm. We still slam each other quite a bit behind the scenes as well, but,
right.
You know, we know each other's, you know, I don't want to say darkest secrets, but we know how we feel about racing in general. And I mentioned Erkenbrights, and that's a guy that it doesn't seem like a weekend goes by I don't think about Archie.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think about him a lot during the week. Random things will happen, and I'll think about Archie, or I'll see something on TV, and I'll think of a story that reminds me of him and Herway, or you know, I mean, I have a million Archie stories, but yeah, I'm like you. I think about him often, and just a great guy. I mean, just one of those guys that. You know, I met through his daughters,
right.
and just got to know him, and he became like a dad, you know, and when I'd go over to their place, I mean, it was like going home, you know. Him and Mary Janet would just take you in, and just really solid people, and one of those guys that you just always kind of miss all the time.
He ever scold you any?
Oh, did he ever?
Yeah. Let's talk, because I mean, seriously, when someone invites you in their home like you're talking about, they become another dad or another mom.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There were lots of nights where we were here racing, and Archie'd come in and he'd ask me something, and I'd tell him what I did, and if it wasn't exactly what he wanted, you know, you'd get your butt chewed. But it wasn't butt chewed because he was angry. It was butt chewed life lesson time,
right?
You know, and but he treated me like he treated Ed, like he treated Mindy, like he treated Amy, you know, all of them, and I think that's why I respected him so much. It was no bullcrap. It was Archie on 100% all the time, and I think that's why I cared about him as much as I did. And you know, he got me one time pretty good when I worked at a repair shop in Pella. I had ironically, I don't know how he pulled this off, but I had just done an oil change on a guy's pickup, and the guy left, and like 5 minutes later, the telephone rings. And I answered the phone, and it's this guy, and he's just madder than the dickens. And he says, "I'm 2 blocks down the street, and I've dumped every quart of oil you put in my truck on the ground." And I mean, I about died right there, because I thought, oh my gosh,
yeah,
what did I do? You know, and all these things run through my mind, and I'm apologizing, and I'm telling him we'll get somebody down there right away, and all these kind of things. And he lets this go on for about 5 minutes, and then pretty soon he just starts laughing, and I recognize it's Archie. And little did I know, the secretary, he had called and talked to the secretary about, hey, what's Tony doing in the shop today?
Right.
And so he pulled a good one on me. He got me, and Till his last day, we joked about that because I really thought I'd let this guy dump his oil right on the ground as he was driving down the street.
Is that a Newton thing, you think? Because as soon as you said that story, I started flashing back to McCroskey stories. I mean, did those guys have nothing to do but...
Well, I think they come from a time where you could pull tricks on people and not go to jail for it. You know?
Some of the stuff McCroskey did, you could go to jail for.
You know, and that's how they did things.
Yeah.
That's how they had fun. And Archie was always all about having fun. And so that was a lifelong one that we talked about often and laughed about a lot. And but I'll tell you one thing I never did. I never forget to double check the drain plug, and I never forgot to check to make sure that sometimes you can take an oil filter off on a car.
Ring.
The old ring stays on there. Well, when you spin the new one on, it'll leak like a sieve.
Yep, been there, done that.
I always checked.
Yeah, been there, done that.
So anyway,
Archie one time, actually a million times, but one time in particular, I remember he'd always come up to me when I first started working out here. And, you know, we're announcers, but we're also the go-to person, especially me down in the pits. I'm the first one because I'm traveling around everywhere. So he weighs me in, and I didn't see what had happened, but something had happened on the track. He didn't like it, da-da-da-da-da. And he goes, I know you're not the guy to talk to you about this, but you need to find this out for me. And that was fine and dandy, except for sometimes Archie didn't get the answer back he wanted to hear. Then all of a sudden I'm the guy that's in trouble, you know. But he explained that to me one time, and he goes, someday you're going to be in a different role in life, not even at the racetrack, but you got to be fair to everybody.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, he was a coach.
Yeah.
He's like Cappy. He was a coach. You know, he coached football. He coached wrestling. He did lots of things at the Newton High School there.
Sure.
And
Ed followed.
Right. And so that was his nature, you know, and so a lot of things were coaching moments for him. But Archie, I'm telling you, he was that guy that when he was talking to you, I mean, you pay attention.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like you can just kind of blow it off. But had a lot of fun with him. We traveled to a lot of places. I actually drove his car here. I have a VHS tape of it at home. But
I figured it'd be beta.
But that was the first sprint car I'd ever sat in. Well, I should say the first one I ever drove.
Right.
And we got a hot lap here for some reason one night. After the hot laps, he had worked it out with Cappy that I could go out for 4 or 5 laps.
Right.
And,
I remember that night.
It was so cool,
Mm-hmm.
and felt like I went faster than Brian Brown did here a couple weeks ago, and so that was a fun time. But that's the kind of guy Archie was. I just said to him one night, "Man, I'd love to drive this thing sometime." Well, the next week he had it lined up.
Right.
You know, so when I raced my go-kart, you know, I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, and really shouldn't have been doing it anyway. And
See, I don't know whether to believe you on that because, my friend, you are a true Dutchman.
now, let me tell you.
Okay.
When your uncles won't extend you credit anymore,
That's
it's
it.
time to stop.
That's the done deal,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. And so back then, that was kind of how it was. And but Archie would he was a Pennzoil dealer at his shop,
Yep.
and so he provided me all the oil I needed and spark plugs. And I didn't have a driving suit. He come to watch me race at the Newton Card Club one night. Didn't have a driving suit. The next week, I had a 3-layer driving suit that he didn't wear anymore. I mean, that's just the kind of guy he was. It was just, you know, he was one of those guys that once he opened up to you,
Right.
you were in.
Yeah.
You know, and I love him for that forever. And you know, Mary Janet, she's awesome, and the girls, I still have a great relationship with them. And so, so it's lots of fond memories of Archie.
It's family. You mentioned Herway, too, and we talked about Jack Herway. Of course, Tim Trier.
Yeah.
You know, when I came on board, Tim actually made a comeback.
Yep.
Let's go down the route of announcers. You got to work with some pretty, what I consider the big dogs of sprint car racing. We've talked about Herway. We've talked about Trier. We haven't talked a whole lot about Jack Miller.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to forget Dennis Wilson.
Dennis Wilson, that was my next subject.
Yeah, you know, we'll come back to him then. But yeah, Jack Miller. So so when I started here, Jack was still coming back for the Nationals only at that point. And, you know, when Jack Miller came here, he kind of owned the place, you might say, or so he thought.
Right.
And so he was always up in the booth during the Nationals, never would go down. So I would always get shuttled down to the infield during the Nationals, which was fine.
Right.
And
you guys were shuttling. When you say shuttling, they were rotating back then
Yep.
a lot of times anyway.
Yep. And so, but during the Nationals, I would be in the infield, which was great because I liked that anyway.
Right. You've tried to convince me to do that a couple times still.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it at all. But so anyway, so then got to work with Jack here. Then a couple times I went and announced at the Devil's Bowl, and Jack was also there. So worked with him there, worked with him at the Chili Bowl. And I would say I kind of took his seat when he finally quit at the Chili Bowl and he retired. I had started there maybe 2 years before he retired. And then when he retired, then I moved upstairs all the time at the Chili Bowl, and it's kind of been that way ever since. And I'd have to do the numbers, but it's got to be 20 plus years.
Yeah, a lot.
And so anyway, so I worked with Jack a lot, learned a lot from him.
Was there ever that moment with Jack? 'Cause Jack's a hard character for me to figure out because I only got to see Jack in the radio days. He'd walk through the pits, always had a smile, good to see you, boom, down the road he went to do his job. You get to sit side by side with this guy a lot of times. Was there ever that scolding moment from Jack? What are you thinking? Or what? No, you don't do it that way?
No, I wouldn't say a scolding moment, but he was very clear how he wanted things done.
He had a precise way.
And sometimes I feel like, people don't get to see what happens in our booth here in Knoxville. And there are nights when I go back to the motorhome and I'm kind of replaying in my head what happened. And I think, oof, boy, I kind of had a Miller moment there, because Jack was very quick. If you were doing something he didn't like, he just told you.
Right.
He didn't put powdered sugar on it. He just
I'm gonna tell you straight up, old pal. You've had more than one of those moments of the Miller moments, then, if that's what we're gonna call those things. You've had several of those moments.
And so, but I learned that I would say from him that, when you're trying to run a show on the PA and you're trying to put on a show,
right,
and you have it in your mind how you think things should go, and when they don't go that way, you got two choices. You can let her spiral out of control, or you can fix it.
Yeah.
And Jack's style was he's going to fix it because he was in control of the booth that night, and so those were the Miller moments,
right,
where he would turn the microphone off and just tell you don't ever do that again, and this is what you're going to do, and but he had a great way. There was nobody that could tell stories about history of racing better than him.
Sure.
He'd get on the PA at 3:00 in the afternoon if there was somebody walking on the fairgrounds, and he'd just start talking on the PA telling stories. And he had a great way about that. And because, he traveled around with Joey Chitwood and all those places he'd been over the years and with the Outlaws in the early days. And so he had lots of great stories. Sure. And
he had bowling alley experience out here too.
He had,
because he lived in Knoxville. He was at the bowling. He ran the bowling alley for a little while.
He had stories about everything, Mike. And so that was pretty cool. But I often think, and I've told you this before, I've asked you this, what would Jack Miller do today in our environment of how we announce races and put on a show?
Lose his mind.
Yes, he would.
Lose his mind.
And, one of the things I think that kind of helped him decide that his time had come to stop announcing was he did not like all the sponsor reads and things like that we have to do today. And I don't even think about it most nights because it's just part of what we do.
Right.
But back then, in Jack's heyday, that wasn't part of what you do. What you did was talk about races and where they raced last night and the night before that and so on and so forth, and that was it. And so I often chuckle inside when I turn the microphone off at the end of the night and I think to myself, man, did I even get a call any races or did I just read sponsor stuff all night long?
Right.
I often chuckle because it's like, well, I know what Jack Miller would have done.
Yeah.
He would have leaned more toward calling races and talking about races than the sponsor stuff. But it's just a different time. And I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong.
Right.
But it's certainly different.
Back then, if I dare be so bold here, back then a sponsor would come in and they get the picture taken, and that was about it. They got to stand with the winner. And it was a big deal for them back then. They got their name in the newspaper of it's McDonald's night or it's Hy-Vee night or whatever, and that was the gist of the sponsorship. Maybe one or two employees came along with a manager for that picture, and that was it.
Right.
Now you bring the company with you, so you have to acknowledge that. It's a new time period.
Right.
You and I have made that transition. What I don't understand with the transition, I could have never done what you did, by the way, because you started outside with Dennis and with Jack.
Yep.
And you did the rotation, and you were total access. People could walk up to you guys outside and interrupt anything.
Right.
And I've been in that booth.
And did a lot of times.
And I've been in the booth situation where if somebody opens up the door, it's like, what's going on? Because you're in a zone, you've got a job to do. I compare it because people have said this to me. Why are you guys cranky once in a while when you're announcing? Why? It's our job, folks. Yes, we entertain. We love what we do. But if I was working at 3M
Yeah.
on my machine, you wouldn't come up to me and talk to me there.
Right.
You know?
Right. You know, when I started here,
And I'm not saying the fans. I'm talking about other coworkers.
anybody.
Yeah,
it could be fans.
yeah.
It could be the concession girl. It could be anybody.
Yeah.
When I started here, you know, the old press box was there. The suites weren't on
Right.
top of the grandstands, and
Cappy and Bob Wilson
there
and then
were
the scorekeepers
20
were
less
there.
rows up
Yeah.
there. You know.
Yeah.
And,
That's the only people allowed in that score box were those people.
Yep. And so we had a table right outside the big window, and Arlita sat right on the inside of that window, and then Dee sat next to her, and I can kind of still see them all sitting in there. But anyway, we would read the time. Arlita would turn the time clock so we could see it through the window because they didn't want us in there. They wanted it quiet inside that booth. And so we would be sitting there, and Mark and Ron and Knopf sat right at the top of the grandstands, right at the end of our little area, platform area. And then the fans were right in front of us. So if I knocked a paper off the front of the table, it landed on somebody's head, you know, and we had little lights clamped to the table, and we had rocks all over everything, and we had our magnets up there because
Sure.
we did all the things on magnets back
Still
then.
had magnets when I started.
And, you know, it was not uncommon for somebody, a fan that was not happy about something, just come flying up there, and if one of us weren't announcing, they'd just grab hold of us and let us have it, you know, because something they didn't like on the racetrack or whatever. And so then it wasn't long, and one of the sheriff's posse stood at the end of that platform, and nobody got through there because, I mean, it got to be a little bit hectic sometimes, you know. And so, you know, and when you're on the microphone and you got somebody over here cussing and swearing and hollering and raising Cain, that's going out over the PA.
Yeah.
And so, so that changed things when the sheriff's posse stood there. Then when they built the suites, the first half of the season, we actually announced from the new top row where the walkway is behind the bleachers now.
Right.
At the very top, at the top of section, let's see, it would be the top of section F.
Right.
If you walk up there and you look on one of these poles, there's still microphone jacks there, but we had a little area set up there that we could plug right in, and that just didn't work.
No.
Because we had people in front
You're
of us,
still
we had
there.
people walking behind us,
Yep,
we
yep,
had
yep.
we had people trying to get through with wheelchair. It was awful. And thank goodness one of the fair board members at the time made the comment, we didn't spend all this money so that our announcers could stand outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went inside. We didn't have a choice. And we were out there because Herway didn't want to be in the booth.
Yeah.
He wanted to be out where he could hear.
I get it.
You know, and
Yeah, I
because
get it.
It took some time at first. You know, when you get in the booth, you don't hear the cars as well, and you certainly don't smell the smells.
I
and-
compare it
and
to
all that
watching it
kind
on
of stuff.
TV. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but now I don't even think twice about it. I mean, you know, quite honestly, if I have to go, like when I announced at Oski, that's more of a disruption for me than it was going from outside to inside. So
Right.
it's just what you get used to, and
Well, you spent more time inside now.
yeah,
You know, for the most
sure,
part.
for sure.
That and that story we go with because the first year here, Tim still worked for Maytag.
Yep.
And he wanted to go downstairs on Maytag night. So him and I swapped. I went and called the feature. And I haven't been back. Well, I shouldn't say haven't been back. I haven't been up there for a sprint car race since.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it is. I couldn't feel it.
Yeah, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to create your own energy in the booth compared to the roar of the engines and
Right.
hearing the fans cheer and stuff. I mean, we can still hear all that.
You
in
can
the
feel
booth.
it, yeah. The
And I can
shaking.
still hear the crowd screaming and stuff like that, but it's just not the same as it was
Yeah.
when we were outside.
There's nothing more spectacular, and I've said this a million times, when you're standing, especially in the middle of that pit area, and you got both sides of the place filled up with people during nationals. And I'm going back to the Steve Kinzer era, and Steve Kinzer gets past, and the whole place explodes. You can hear the crowd above the motors.
For sure. You know, I can think of when I was doing some TV races here back for TNN. That's how far back I go. And then, of course, when Speed was here, the night that Brian almost won the Knoxville Nationals by less than half a car length over when Donnie beat him. My producer is talking in one ear.
Right.
I hear the program in the other ear, and the noise is going on, and all I can hear are the fans screaming at the top of their lungs. I can't hear anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking
Same.
about it.
Yeah.
But that, I don't know how to get people to experience that kind of feeling about a race, but it's the coolest thing ever.
It's our passion about it too. I mean, it has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, but to know that 30,000 people
Right.
are just at the top of their lungs screaming about something is pretty cool. When you're standing 15 feet away from 24 sprint cars roaring by you at full speed, so it's pretty awesome.
Talking about Dennis Wilson and a guy, in fact, Chris Crone is doing the flashback videos or whatever he calls those things,
Yep.
and you get to listen to hear Dennis do a lot of announcing. What a great guy!
What an awesome guy! Dennis had the best sense of humor of anybody I've ever met in my life, and he was a very educated person, and so he knew lots of things, right? Things that you might be like, why do you know that?
Just outside of racing is what you're talking about.
Just in general. And so he would bring those things up at random times, and it would just be funny. But a good story about him is he and Jack Herway and I went to Pennsylvania one time. And I don't know why we weren't here. I don't know what the deal was. But anyway, we went out for the National Open. And then we went to a bunch of different tracks in Pennsylvania and went to Bobby Allen's shop back when Bobby was still racing. And went to all these really cool places. And when you spend 3 days with somebody, you learn a lot about them.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And but Dennis was an awesome guy. Fun. His main goal was to always have fun. And tell stories and jokes, and he was fun to work with. He never let the seriousness of what we do here get in the way of having fun. He didn't ever let it get to him. It never did. You and I, and you see me. I
say we didn't learn from that.
No, I get pretty keyed up on a lot of things that happen here, but Dennis was just always right there, in the middle of the road, having fun. Never let anything bother him, and he was a coach, also a track coach at Montezuma, and the Wilsons are well known here in Knoxville. He's from here.
You got tighter with Dennis. I knew Randy really well.
Yep.
He was in the coaching system with me. I think Randy, and again, Bob, working with him, but I think Randy and Dennis probably had the closer personalities because when it came time to coach, they coach, but they're not beyond pulling a little gag every now and then.
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
For
sure. Like I say, it's all about having fun.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell the story, but I'll never eat pie and ice cream the same way in my life.
You got to tell a story.
Well,
I mean, come on.
I can't.
Is it legal? Is it not legal?
Some things you just never
The
tell.
statutes of limitations have not run out on this one, folks.
But if you ask Jack Herway about eating pie and ice cream, my guess is before you say anything else, he'll just start laughing.
Yeah, and Jack will tell you the story probably.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Wow, this is going to be a good one.
But it's those things, right?
This is
things that.
Okay, so we have to write this down. The pie and ice cream story will be our final show together ever that we talk about. We're going to do someday. All right.
I don't know.
The one that'll probably get us fired.
Yeah, right.
So
I know, because someday when I go to heaven, Dennis is going to be standing there waiting for me.
Exactly right.
So
you keep talking about coaches, and we talked about this gentleman last time. We're going to talk about him again, and you know where I'm going.
Yep.
The ultimate coach, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
Ralph Capitani. Still doesn't feel real. We every time you and I talk about it, I think it doesn't feel real because he sticks in our memories bank so much. You were telling a story about the old score booth, and literally it was Bob, it was Cappy, and it was scorekeepers.
Right.
KNIA, I worked for them at the time, and we did live trackside, and I convinced them that we need to do updates throughout the night. So we do. And they've got a little corner of that booth now. They've convinced Cappy, hey, all we're going to do is phone it in between races. We won't interrupt any scorekeeping, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
We're going to put Mike Roberts up there. And I go up there, and Cappy goes, the Cappy way. And literally, Jim Butler sets me up. He goes, Cappy says, you're not to talk during the race at all. All you do is phone it in when there's no action going on. So here's where you're phoning in. After heat races, I think it was after that, back then we did dashes. After the dash, after the heat races, and after the feature. That's it. You do not talk in this booth to anyone until then. Mm-hmm. And that went really well all season long. And I know it's hard to believe for me. All right, really hard. Until Nationals. Nationals comes along. And it was the year they had the rain delays, Stevie Smith, Steve Kinzer. And Cap gave the go-ahead. They hauled on the radio, are we going to let them work on their cars?
Yeah.
And Cap said, you bet. Let them work on them. And I leaned back and I said, you just gave this thing to Steve Kinzer. because you never give Carl Kinsler another opportunity.
Yeah.
Mike Roberts wasn't in the booth anymore after that.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
That was the end of that show. So,
I've met a lot of people in my life, but there's only one person that I think that can control you, and that would have been him.
yeah. There's no doubt about it. And many had tried. And you know, I'll throw it out there. Bruce Nemeth, you know, he passed away here a few years ago, and Bruce did marketing back then, and it was huge with the late models. He was a big part of that. And Bruce came up to me the second night. I don't remember what late model nationals it was, but it might have been the first one. And he comes up to me the second night. And he goes, "Hey, you're going upstairs and announcing tonight." He goes, "We got too many people in the infield. You're going to be upstairs and announcing." I said, "No, I'm not." And he goes, "Well, yeah, you are." I said, "No, I'm not." He goes, "We'll see what Cappy has to say about this." And he goes right in the ticket office. And I'm over in Dyer Huts at the media center. He comes back through there, doesn't even talk to me. I said, "Hey, Bruce, what'd Cap say?" "You're downstairs tonight." I went and grabbed remember the old wireless microphone with the antenna 8 feet long?
Yep.
I went in there and Cap's in there doing his thing.
Best wireless microphone we've ever had, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Cap goes in there. Old Faithful, we called it.
Yeah.
I go in there and Cappy's in there, and I said, "Bruce, come talk to you?" "Yeah." I said, "What was said?" I said, "He won't go upstairs for me. Why the hell will he do it for you?" You know? That was the end of the conversation for that.
Yeah.
You know, I've told the story a million times about the whole Dave Hesmer and Jeff Swindell thing, bringing up history on that. Did you ever get? I mean, after I came on board, I was the target, obviously. But did you ever get the jump from Cap, the scold of Bokhoven? What are you thinking? Or
Yeah, you know, when I started, I was pretty. I don't know how to say it. I got really wound up when I would announce.
No.
And
What do you mean when you started?
well, it took a couple hard lessons to break me of it.
Right.
But, you know, Greg Stevens always used to tell me, when you announce, you can't always announce on 10. Otherwise, people don't know when to get excited.
Right.
Well, so one night we're racing and Cappy comes to me and says, "You need to calm down." And I said, "Yeah, okay, Cap, okay, you know, because you never told Cappy no, right?"
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
"Oh, okay.
Try it once.
So a little bit later, here he comes. And he grabs the microphone out of my hands. "I'm not telling you again."
He grabbed the mic. I did not know the
Took
story.
it out of my hand.
Wow.
"I'm not telling you again. You better calm down right now." And he threw the microphone down on the counter and walked away. And I looked at her way, and her way said, "Now you know."
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And but that was probably the only time I really got a scolding or
Right.
from Cappy. I mean, I was always, even after he retired, I was always intimidated by him because I had so much respect for him.
Yeah.
And Cappy was a lot like Archie. If he was talking to you, you better be on point, listening and paying attention, because he wasn't telling you again.
I've said this before. Terry McCarl has said this before. About every driver down here that came across Kathy's wave, if you will, has said this.
Yep.
When Cappy talks, good, bad, or ugly, it's almost like a Godfather atmosphere.
Yep.
And when I say Godfather, I'm not talking the who Godfather is
Right,
going on
no,
now.
no.
I'm talking about Mafia Godfather back in the day. Not that you were going to get whacked. You felt like you might get whacked.
Right.
But he had that tone about him of getting his point across. Again, back to coaching.
Yeah. I always felt bad if Cappy had to come talk to me. I almost felt like I needed to go apologize.
Yeah.
Because
Tony, you did good tonight. Sorry, Cappy.
sorry. Or he never called me Tony.
Yeah, Anthony.
He always called me Anthony.
Yep.
And there were lots of nights that Cappy would, "Anthony, come here." And I'd be like, "Oh man, here it comes. This is it." And all he'd tell me is, "Good job tonight."
Yeah.
That was it. And then he'd walk away, or drive off on his golf cart or whatever. But you just never knew, because Cappy wasn't one of those guys that was just roll up to you and make small talk with you. If he was talking to you, he needed something.
Yeah.
Or he wanted you to know something. And so I was just always intimidated by that. And even after he retired, when I'd see him sitting on the bench by the ticket office and he'd wave me over or whatever, and I'd go talk to him, and I was just always like, oh boy,
Yeah.
what's coming, and but it's just because I had so much respect for him.
I had the opportunity to live next door to him for about a year. And I discovered at that particular time there was Michael and there was Roberts. And if it was Michael, I was going to, get a little lesson of, hey, let's do it this way. What do you think? Or you did a good job. Every Nationals, he'd come up to me and say, "Michael, good job," in the press conference afterwards. I mean, that was what I was looking for all the time. But buddy, when he said Roberts,
I want you to tell
it
the
was
famous
on.
story.
Which famous story? I just told the
Mike Roberts.
if you ever
say
that,
that
I
again?
just told that story. I did. I just told
that
that
was
story on the
great.
show last week. Yeah, it
That
was
was
something.
great.
Yeah, I just did that story, and I didn't know what I did wrong. It took me 4 days to build up the courage to say, what did I do wrong?
You ever ask a question like that again? You're
Yeah,
done.
I even told the fact I went in there.
Oh,
and
that was great.
We went outside, and I gave him a cigarette. I smoked a cigarette back then, and everything else.
I didn't smoke, and I wanted to smoke a cigarette that night.
Exactly. And talking about cigarettes, I got to tell this story. I've never told this story on here. So I quit smoking for like a year and a half, 2 years one time. I've quit since 2008 now, but this is back when I was trying to quit and never. So I quit for like a year and a half, and Cappy'd always tell me, "You quit that stuff. You don't want to be. You'll quit that stuff." So I quit. Well, we had a bad night. Not me and him, but we had a bad night here at the track. And Cappy always stole lighters. I mean, if you gave him your lighter, kiss it goodbye, he puts it back in his pocket and he leaves.
Yeah.
And he comes up to me and we talk about what happened. He goes, "Give me a smoke." I said, "Cap, I quit." "Well, you dumbass." It's like, now wait a minute. You've been trying to get me to quit.
Yeah.
And they, again, on the golf cart, there he goes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I spent the rest of the night going, I'm a dumbass,
There's only been 2 times in the time that I knew Cappy that I actually saw him really pissed off.
Yeah.
The night he told you that was one of them.
Yeah.
And then the other night was the night he got Doug Clark in the schoolroom.
The scold room, we called it.
Yeah.
The scold room. That was a new nickname
Boy,
after
he
that.
Was mad.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd never seen Cappy that mad, like vibrating mad.
Right.
And he let Doug have it right in front of everybody. And that wasn't Cappy's style.
No.
Cappy's style was not to take you down in front of a group of people. But that night he let Doug have it, and everybody sat there after Cappy walked out, and nobody said a word. It was just like silence.
Even coaching football on the sidelines, if he chewed you, he'd grab you and pull you off the side away from everybody. He never, it was a soft scolding. You got the point.
Yeah.
It wasn't a screaming, you blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It was, but never did that. But that the scold room, that's why we
Yeah,
renamed that thing. So
The night on the microphone when he got you, it was great because
I didn't know I did wrong. I was dumbfounded.
There's always a lot of chatter on the radio, right?
Right.
Well, after Cappy does this on the radio, I mean, it's quiet.
Oh, yeah.
Like nobody dared.
John
say
McCoy
anything.
was still pitch steward then. I'm walking up
So
the
great.
push-off lane because we still had 410s to do. And he comes around and goes, "What'd you do?" I said, "I don't know. I had no idea." I found out later what I did. Cappy don't bring up history. It was last week. It was done and over with. Quit talking about it.
Yeah.
You can't change it.
Oh, he was mad at you. It was great.
It actually worked out pretty good for me though. I'm still serving time. So.
That was a good one.
You just celebrated last year, the end of the season, 25 years. You're on number 26 right now. I know what my end game is. What's Tony Bokhoven's end game? What's he going to do when he says, "You know what? I'm done announcing at Knoxville Raceway"?
I don't know.
I'm not saying what year. I'm just saying, what's the plan?
I don't know. I mean, we've talked about that a few times about how long, Justin Zock, whom is one of my best friends in the world.
Quitter.
And, there's Daniel Lasowski.
He is, yeah.
One of my best friends in the world, he often says to me, "When are you going to hang it up?
Right.
How much longer are you going to do this?" Because he keeps telling me, "Tony, there is life after Knoxville."
Right.
And I keep telling him he's wrong.
Yeah.
And he's proved to me that there is. I mean, he's so happy where he's at right now. And I don't know, though, Mike. I don't know. I'm a terrible fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that you would see me sitting in the grandstands every Saturday
That's
night.
why Herway drinks so much.
Yeah. But, I don't know if I would do that.
Right.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think I'd have to move.
I mean, I love
if I'm not
racing
in the
so
pits, I'd have to
much.
move.
As I've documented before, I'm a huge drag racing fan. So maybe if I wasn't doing this, I would go find some way to be involved in drag racing at Eddyville or something like that. I don't know, but my guess is when I quit announcing, I'll probably be 70.
You're going out Jack Miller style is what you're trying to tell me.
That's right. I'm gonna come here one night, just like Jack did.
Yeah.
And some young kid is gonna wear me out, and I'm gonna be like, "That's it. I'm done."
Yeah.
And that'll be the end of it. And there'll be no fond farewell. It'll just be like, "That's it."
Which at the end of every Chili Bowl, you kind of sound like Jack Miller too.
Well, after 7 days of announcing in that environment, it's hard on your lungs, but on your
Exactly.
pipes. But anyway, I would guess that's probably how it'll happen for me. I'll be here until I can't do it, or until I don't think I can do it good enough, and then that'll be it.
All right. Well, my friend, pal,
Wow.
as we say, thanks for coming on the show again. We got to wrap this thing up,
Thanks for having
and
me.
next time we may do that final episode as we always threaten.
Folks, you won't want to miss that one.
That's all right. That's gonna have to be one of them HBO Max specials or something.
Stories you always wondered about, you'll find all about them that night.
That's gonna wrap it up for this edition of Knoxville Dirt Digest. See everybody later.
Tired of doing this? Get a can of this and spend more time doing this. Seafoam helps engines start easier, run smoother, and last longer. Seafoam. Seafoam! Help your engine run smoother and last longer with Seafoam motor treatment. Just pour it in. Seafoam works to clean your fuel system, clean your oil system, and stabilizes fuel up to 2 years. Make the proven choice. Seafoam motor treatment. Available everywhere automotive products are sold.
The best Wing 410 sprint car drivers in the world will converge on the Southern Iowa Speedway for the 26th annual Sage Fruit Front Row Challenge. The Champions Belt is up for grabs on Monday, August the 9th. See who will win the $20,000 cash prize. There will be slide jobs and all the side-by-side action you can handle. So get your tickets online at oskichallenges.com or by calling 515-957-0020.